Good morning. It's good to be with you this morning. If you have a Bible or a device, I invite you to open up to Luke chapter 10. Luke chapter 10. If you're visiting with us or maybe watching online, we have begun a series a few weeks ago that we have entitled Some Assembly Required. Every year, usually around the month of May, we do a series focusing on the family. And that's been our effort through this series. We've looked the last few weeks, we looked at why the family matters, why focus on it. We looked at why children and heritage matters. Last week, we spent time looking at mothers that matter. Today, we're going to kind of transition in this series a little bit into a little bit more of the practical. We've kind of looked at the academic of why does this matter, who are the core components of this all. We're going to transition into some of the things that our families struggle with. I wanted to start by reading Ephesians 5. Ephesians 5, if you've never read the first couple verses of Ephesians 5, I'd like to read it to you this morning. Not a place we always go when talking about the family, but here's the reality. Paul is writing to the Ephesian Christians, and what's great about this is listen to the first two verses, and then on your own time, maybe later this afternoon, go read the rest of Ephesians 5, because this is the preamble that leads us into discussions of family and marriage and some of the most seminal text we have on all these others. But look how it starts. We don't always connect this back, but it says, "Follow God's example, therefore, as dearly loved children, and walk in the way of love, just as Christ loved us and gave himself up for us as a fragrant offering and a sacrifice to God." I read it this way in connection to Ephesians 5, the first two verses. Family life is not just about rules. It's about expressing sacrificial love because that reflects who God is. That's the message of Ephesians 5 in particular to families is look at Christ. Follow God's example, therefore, as dearly loved children, and walk in the way of love just as Christ has loved us. We're going to talk today about the busy family. Now, we're going to talk about it, and we're going to frame this lesson. All the next three are all going to be framed within the context of the family. But the reality is every part of the next three lessons, while they are focused at the family, remember, family is just the sum total of all of us individually. That's true of the church family. That's true of the individual family. So you can be single by yourself at home and still you are your family. You have spiritual family. You have earthly family, other places. And busyness is a cancer to all of those sections, if we let it. Now, busyness just in and of itself is kind of a neutral thing. We'll talk more about that. But the next 3 weeks, we're going to look at some of the challenges that our families face, and one of those is busyness. I want you to ask 3 questions. Now, these are going to be ones that I want you to ponder on a little bit more. You probably won't have this answer right away. But when you go to lunch today, when you go back home, maybe tomorrow, maybe next week, I want you to answer the question, why are we so busy? I want you to look practically. You don't have to tell anybody, but I want you to answer the question, why are you so busy? What keeps pushing us to say yes? Why do we feel like we have to say yes to everything all the time? If we had more time, again, today's lesson and service is kind of condensed to focus on our lads participants, but the research that has been done on the hurrying up of our society over the last 20 years is shocking. That if you go back and if you ever think to yourself, man, it feels, when I was a kid, it felt slower. It's because it was. And the further you go back, the more that feels that way. Now, some of the progression that we've made as society is probably a good thing. There have been progressions in medicine and technology and business and all other good stuff. But somebody has to pay the price for that. And I think one of the larger demographics is our families. Work has asked more of us. School has asked more of us. Hobbies ask more of us. Why are we so busy? Who is it that what pushes us to say yes? And then who keeps adding more on top of that? These are kind of broad questions, but I think if you engage with these 3, even if you don't have perfect answers for all 3, it will give you a better understanding, a better thumb on the pulse of where you are as a family unit. Because the reality is, statistically speaking, our families are all busy. You are busy, I am busy. That can be okay, but if it comes at the detriment of spiritual things, we've got it out of whack. If you've already looked over into Luke chapter 10, you know the story we're going to this morning. Luke 10, 38 through 42, a story, one of the few that really focuses on this topic. And it's one that in one way or another I preach on every year. And you might think, Keaton, why do we talk about busyness at least once a year? Because the reality is we could talk about busyness every month and we would still get it wrong. Most of us. This is not something that we're going to square away. Oh, we'll talk about it once and we'll be good for the next. Busyness is something that will continue to try to push into our lives. You've heard me say this before. If Satan can't make us bad, he will make us busy. Because in reality, it amounts to about the same thing. An overly committed, overly busy Christian serves the kingdom in the same way as no Christian at all. That feels harsh. Every time I say that, I know it sounds harsh. But recognize that if our priority is out and all we focus on is I got to go to work, I got to do this, I got to do this, and then it amounts to what am I doing for the kingdom? What am I doing for my family? What am I doing for my wife, for my children, for my church family? And then you realize that bucket is almost dry and every other bucket is near overflowing. Look from Satan's perspective. Is that somebody that Satan's going to worry about doing great things for the kingdom? Probably not, because they don't have the time to. Let's read Luke chapter 10 together. Luke chapter 10, 38 through 42. Again, a story you know well, Mary and Martha, but pay attention to how this reads. Now, as they went on their way, Jesus entered a village, and a woman named Martha welcomed him into her house. Highlight that. We're going to come back to that. That means more than we may sometimes think. And she had a sister called Mary, who sat at the Lord's feet and listened to his teachings. But Martha was distracted with much serving. And she went up to him and said, Lord, do you not care that my sister has left me to serve alone? Tell her then to help me. But the Lord answered her, Martha, Martha, you are anxious and troubled about many things, but pay particular attention to 42. This is what makes it all really matter. But one thing is necessary. Mary has chosen the good portion, which will not be taken away from her. We look at that story and there's so much to dig into, and we touch on it at least once a year in one way or another. Mary and Martha are doing good things, but sometimes when we lose focus on the best thing, good things become a distraction. Does that make sense? I want to offer you a few thoughts this morning with regards to busyness. Again, we're going to hit these quickly. This is not an exhaustive study, but it is a study to make you think. All right, number one, busyness often begins with good responsibilities. Busyness often begins with good, right responsibilities. What does that mean? The reality is most of your busyness, maybe not most, a good majority of your busyness is stuff that you do have to address. You have jobs, you have responsibilities, you have family, you have bills, you have obligations, things that you cannot just slough off. And I've even heard well-meaning Christians say, but shouldn't I prioritize focus on spiritual things over those other things? And there comes a point where, yeah, that's true, but some of these obligations, like Martha was distracted with much serving. Serving is great. Your job is great. Your career is great. Other obligations are things you need to address. But if there comes a point where, think metaphorically, where Jesus is in your home and you can't see it because of all the other things, we're probably out of whack. Busyness most often begins with the good responsibilities. They begin with job. They begin with relationship. They begin with things that are inherently good and fine, and in many cases, healthy. That's why it's phrased this way. It begins there. But then Satan can creep in and say, but did you really make enough? Don't you need to go work a few more hours? Your family will be fine. You go put in that extra time to go afford A, B, and C. Or do you really need to pursue this? Maybe you should go. And we begin to become distracted. Martha was distracted with much serving. I read it this way, and I thought this was so good. Martha is serving Jesus, but she's missing Jesus. Have you considered that? Friends, you and I can be really close to Jesus and not serve him and not call him master. You and I can sit metaphorically next to Christ and not call him Lord. Martha's serving Jesus, but she's missing him. We can provide for our children and then never be present. We can maintain a house, but we can lose the home. We can attend church, but never slow down enough to worship. We can do things for God while quietly drifting away from him. Friends, busyness almost always begins with good responsibilities. And I love this quote because it highlights that. Home, work, church, all fantastic. But are we missing serving Christ? Is your family schedule, this may be a good litmus test for many. Is your family schedule helping you become more Christ-like, or is it pulling your hearts away from him? We're going to get a little bit more granular. Again, this is not our most exhaustive lesson on busyness. We have others you can go back and listen to. But is your family schedule moving you more to Christ or further away? All right, number 2, I challenge you to rethink your view of time. I want to challenge you to rethink your view of time. Most people, maybe even myself included, most often think of time as a commodity. Now think about what a commodity is. Commodity, generally speaking, is something that we can use, we can manage, we can sell it, we can trade it, we can use as a fixture. But I'm going to suggest to you that time is not a commodity. Time is a gift. We treat gifts different than commodities. Commodities are something that if we lose a little bit of it, so not that big a deal, we can earn more back later. Almost every commodity market in the world is that way. You can lose a little bit here on paper, you can recoup it, a week down the road. Time is not that way. There is no amount of money in the world that can buy us more. We can't earn more. We are given what we have from God. Psalm 90 in verse 12. I put 2 translations up for you. I like the NLT, but I want to read you the ESVs as well. Teach us to realize the brevity of life so that we may grow in wisdom. The ESV says, teach us to number our days that we may get a heart of wisdom. Don't miss the inference. Time is a gift. You and I only have so much on this side of eternity. We've talked about this leading up to, and we'll continue to focus on the family. You and I have so many days with our spouse, with our children, in our jobs, with our church families. And when we think about this, again, maybe broader than just the family, but when you and I, if we're reframing our view of time, when we get to judgment one day, and every one of us will, what's really going to matter to you? I don't claim to know exactly logistically how judgment is going to function, but if you and I have the wherewithal to know what all is going on around us and to be able to think through our lives and the decisions, what do you want to be proud of? That who's sitting with you? What's really going to matter? Is it career? Is it money? Is it relationships? What matters? Because all of it is a gift from God. I said it already, but it's worth repeating. You can't create more time. You can't buy any more. You have what God has gifted you. We think of money so often as a stewardship. We've already talked about the family a little bit as stewardship. I'm going to suggest to you that time is another stewardship category. We are given a brief amount as a gift, as a loan. In the same way that the master of the servants is going to come back and say, what have you done with my money, with my talents. We talk about those a lot, and we really kind of put them in threes: time, talents, and treasure. We talk about talents and treasure a lot, but that time is the third one. I think we're going to answer for that the same way. Keaton, what did you do with your time when you were here? Who is in heaven because of the time you invested? I don't care how much money you made. I don't care about your jobs. I don't care about what you've owned. I don't care about any of that. What did you do with your time? Who did you invest that in? I think those are the questions we're going to get asked. Which leads us to number 3. The family must choose the better portion. Remember, he's talking to Mary and Martha, and he's not dismissing Martha. He's not even telling Martha that what she's saying is wrong or out of line. He's not saying, Martha, Mary should, but he's saying, in this moment, Mary has chosen the best portion, the better portion. Because today, the dishes don't matter, the meal doesn't matter. Not that they're wrong, not that she is wrong for wanting help, but he's saying, you've got the Messiah in your home. Choose the better portion. Friends, we don't have the privilege of receiving Christ in the flesh in our homes, but the reality is, are we choosing the better portion for our families? Don't lose your family while you're managing your life. Don't lose your faith while you're managing your life. Your life needs managed. Don't misunderstand me. We have jobs, we have obligations, we have relationships, we have bills. Money's not inherently bad, jobs aren't inherently bad, but this is what it comes back to. Are we losing faith? Are we losing family in lieu of those other things? And if so, I challenge you to go back and read Luke 10 and verse 42. Mary chose the best portion. Matthew 7 and verse 24. Everyone then who hears these words of mine and does them will be like a wise man who built his house on a rock. Does that describe our families? Again, we're going to spend the rest of our time throughout the month of May looking at things like busyness that challenge our families, that we have to wrestle to the ground. Because again, our families have some assembly required. Our marriages, our children. But again, broader than just that. You may be single and only thinking about yourself and maybe your church family. There's still building that needs to take place. You're not going to fall backwards into a healthy relationship with God. This morning, if you aren't a Christian, I challenge you to think about Matthew 7. Everyone who hears these words of mine and does them. Knowledge alone isn't worth a whole lot until you and I press it, put it into practice, and say, I'm going to build my foundation. I'm going to pick the better portion. If you have any gospel need this morning, would you come let us know about it as we stand and as we sing?